Hello, Aqualandians. It's me, Yamikatsu, the Aqualandian historian. Today we talk about the father of the American Navy, a man so patriotic he's not even from America. So today we talk about John Paul Jones. John Paul Jones was born on July 6, 1747 in Scotland. Before we go on, it's important to mention that his birth name was John Paul, not John Paul Jones. This will be important later. Now, this little Scot grew up and became a sailor and served on several merchant ships. He went on his first voyage on the Friendship. That's right, guys. The only ship he needed is a friend ship. But anyways, a lot of his earlier voyages were to Virginia. This will be important later. From that there he just went from ship to ship. Now, when he first gets power is when he is on a brig and the captain dies of yellow fever. So he takes control of the ship and safely brings it back to Scotland, where he is awarded leadership over the vessel. On his next voyage, a man tried to mutiny over wages. So being the sensible man he was, he beat the man up and he died shortly after. So now he's a murderer. Yes, the father of the U.S. Navy was a murderer. Just to be clear, he didn't directly kill the man, he was just involved in the death of him, which is still a crime. Though some people believe that the man's death was linked to yellow fever, though on Wikipedia there is no citation, so I cannot confirm this information. But he was released from prison on bail, but his reputation was now in shambles. Also, the man who died was an adventurer from an influential Scottish family, so he fled to England where he commanded a London vessel. It was all sunshines and rainbows in his new life, until he killed another one of his mutineers crewmates with a sword. I'm starting to think this man's a little more on the murdery side of things. He claims it was in self-defense, but he was not willing to be tried because the court he was going to be tried in had a one incy-bincy problem. The person's family who he just murdered were very influential in the court. What is it with this man and murdering influential people? Now, just having murdered two people, he did what any man with honor did. He fled to the land of freedom, where one of his brothers had recently died. He changed his name to John Paul Jones. There was a tradition at the time in North Carolina to adopt the last name Jones in honor of Willie Jones. So, now our murdery protagonist is now safe with a new name and a new life, far from London, and settled down. And then a bunch of angry Bostonians dumped some tea into a pot. So now he enlists in the U.S. Navy. So with a little help from recommendations by important people, he became a first lieutenant and given command of the USS Alfred. Now this was the beginning of his military naval career, where he would assume command of the USS Alfred, a converted frigate. On the USS Alfred, the Grand Union flag, which was the first American flag ever, was hoisted above the vessel. So this was the first American flag ever raised above a sea vessel. So what did he do during the Revolutionary War? His first mission was to raid the Bahamas. Then he mostly did raiding and transportation. He did capture a lot of small brigs on his voyage. This was all in the span of about 1 year, from 1775 to 1776. Before we go on, Mr. Jones here did not like his higher-ups at all. This had the effect of him being demoted a bit and given command of a smaller ship, the USS Ranger. Funnily enough, the historic significance of his first flag being the first to have an American flag was transferred over. Because when he was given command of the Ranger, the same day the Stars and Stripes flag was adopted. He seemed to be there for all the flag moments, honestly. So he sailed to France on the Ranger to help the American cause. Basically, just gave advice to all the American representatives in France. John Paul Jones was the first to receive a 9-gun salute from the French. In 1778, he set sail for Britain. Now, at this point, it's important to mention that his naval tactics were basically just pirate tactics. So in the Irish Sea, he raided ships and was going to participate on an attack on Whitehaven, the place where his maritime career began. But the winds blew in a different direction. But he heard from some captured sailors that the HMS Drake was in Carrickfergus, Ireland. So he tried to attack it, but according to him, The man who was supposed to drop the anchor had a little too much to drink the night before and forgot to do it, so he got blown away to the other side of the Irish Sea again, where he would attempt to attack Whitehaven for the second time. He then led an attack on the city with two boats of 15 men. They disabled the cannons and then they set fire to everything they could, including the 400 ships in the port. Unfortunately, one of the men decided to be a good person and told one of the inhabitants that the city was currently burning down. So the city managed to put out most of the fires, but since Jones had disabled the cannons, they managed to get away safely. He then went up to Scotland to try to ransom an earl. After being convinced to leave, he was going to until his crew decided that they were pirates and wanted to pillage the estate. In the end, they took a very nice large silver emblem of the earl's crest. He then made another attempt to capture the Drake, this time working out and giving command to his second in command. The capture of the Drake was an important symbolic victory. He then became the commander of the Bonhomme Richard, a much larger ship. He also became a distraction for a large fleet. He basically just raided and went into the North Sea. And he and the other three, originally four ships, he was with engaged in the Battle of Flamborough Head. They were up against the Serapis and the Countess of Scarborough. He realized that he could not win in a gunfight, so he tried to board the enemy ship. In the end, they won, but the Richard sank, and Jones took command of the Serapis, where the creation of this flag was made when he docked in the Netherlands to avoid being called a pirate, which he was. He was also given the title of Chevalier or Knight by King Louis XVI of France. He was also awarded the Institution du Mérite Militaire, an important award, and was also given a sword by the king. He also went by Chevalier John Paul Jones from then on. He was awarded a gold medal by Congress. In 1787, he joined the communists. That's right, boys, he joined the enemy. But in all seriousness, he was recruited by Empress Catherine the Great of Russia. This man is really meeting all the roles, isn't he? But he was given a position of rear admiral and he fought against the Turks in the Black Sea and won. But due to his complaining about his senior officers again, he was brought to St. Petersburg. He was awarded the Order of St. Anna, the Russian chivalry order. After this, he was given the task of U.S. consul to the Dey of Algiers to negotiate the release of prisoners. But he never got to do this because on July 18th, 1792, he died of kidney inflammation. But his story does not end here. No, no, no. He was buried in the Royal French Cemetery because the French respected him that much. But in 1905, his body was moved to the United States and placed in a lead coffin. In 1906, his coffin was installed in the Bancroft Hall in the United States Naval Academy in Annapolis, Maryland. But his story doesn't end here because in 1999, he was pardoned by the port of Whitehaven, that place he tried to burn down, officially no longer making him a pirate. Woo, this took a long time to make, so I hope you enjoyed it. Tell me if you want more of this type of content and any other suggestions.